Branding is about creating a perception over time, whereas marketing is about grabbing your attention right now. I visualize it in two different ways. For people who are linear thinkers, is you start with your business strategy. From that, you need a brand strategy to translate your business into terms that your customers care about. Then you create a marketing strategy. But for someone who wants to look at branding more holistically, I see branding as like the hub of an organization, of a company. And that hub, kind of like a seed or a kernel, really informs marketing, but it also informs the culture of the company. It also informs how you go to market to attract potential employees or team members. It also informs the client experience and the customer experience and product development and all those sort of downstream things. And so when you look at branding in that kind of way, you look at it as an asset. You look at it as something you want to nurture, develop, and fine-tune over time rather than a one and done. Here's my logo, now I have a brand.
Hi, this is JP Newman on Investing on Purpose, and today I am so excited to have a very close friend of mine for many, many years, branding genius, guru, life genius, and I don't know a more heartfelt driven entrepreneur than Re Perez. And Re, it is just so great to have you here today. I've been wanting to do this for a long time.
Yeah, I'm so honored to be here, JP. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. And let's have an amazing conversation and add value to people.
For sure. Re, I want to acknowledge you before we even get started, because when I was starting Investing on Purpose 3 years ago, you're episode 71, by the way. And when I was just starting out and really not sure about, can I even do a podcast? It was really you and Ryan Moran and Raj who really helped me form what this was going to be. And if you, I don't know if you remember, Raj, but you, even with the name Investing on Purpose, if you remember how much time you spent with me and just how much respect I have for your ability, I would come to you with long sentences of what I thought the show was supposed to be, like all these long choppy sentences before ChatGPT. And you would just sit there and you'd like mark it up and go, no, it's not that. No, it's not that. Use less words. And we got to Investing on Purpose, and I'm pretty sure you helped birth really concisely what the show was going to be about. So I want to thank you for helping me launch the podcast and your encouragement.
It's my privilege. It's my honor. Thank you so much.
And Ree, you and I really met at a pivotal time, and I'd love to chat about, you and I met about 5 years ago, and it's kind of crazy. I think when you live in Austin, Texas, I don't know if it was just a time in Austin, Texas or what it was, but you and I met and have gone on these great, large, spiritual community experiences together. And I just watched you in 5 years really shoot up. I mean, you've always, from the day I met you, you've always been so heartfelt. I guess that's who you are. You're a badass, heartfelt human and entrepreneur. And I think we see that in each other. But it's been really fun because I've been watching your journey as your friend as well. Not only grow and have an evolutionary thing on your company and what you're doing, but also just I've watched you really bloom into really leading with like heartfelt purpose and execution. And it's what the whole thing's about. So I just want to acknowledge you for that.
Yeah, I got that. And vice versa. I would probably assert that maybe the earlier versions of you and me, if had we met earlier, I don't think that we would have dropped in so deeply. I think both of us has an opportunity. And it's not that we were, I don't know, maybe we were assholes in some degree, shape, or form, or maybe we were less in our heart. And so I've seen you evolve as well. I've seen you sort of like just go deeper and deeper into your heart, and it's beautiful to witness and it's beautiful to experience.
Thank you so much. And I think for today's conversation, Reen, I think what we could really deliver here for the audience today is so many people talk about mindset or they talk about impact. I mean, I can't even tell you how many podcasts I'm listening to on impact and things, and it's almost becoming worn out. I think the hard part is how do you live it? Where it's not a thought, it's not a checklist. It's actually a kind of like just who you are and how you live. And I think you and I share that in common. Like I was just asked on a podcast, like, how did you get to this place? Like, did you read a book? Did you do this? And it's like, it's from years and years of hard work, and then it's just who I am. And I think it's the same with you. Ree, when I met you, everyone said like for branding, if you have a new launch, or a new product, there's this guy named Re Perez, and Re Perez and his agency, like you can't do better in successfully figuring out what your brand is or your service is and how to launch it in a really interesting way.
Mhm.
I actually don't know that much about like I just knew you was Re the Badass. But
Yeah.
before you were just Re the Badass, like when you really were that marketing guru, how did you get to becoming a marketing guru?
Yeah, well, there's slight distinction here. So I'm always humbled when people call me, use the guru assigned to my name. I just, one distinction I'd like to make is that I lean more towards being a branding uh, expert, if you will. And the reason why that's really important is because branding and marketing, while they're very interrelated, and they inform each other, they are distinct. And I'm all about the nuances, right? And so, just at a very high level, to me, how I've been teaching it over the past, I don't know, 23 years is that branding is about creating a perception over time, whereas marketing is about grabbing your attention right now. And so we need both. We need both, right? We need to be able to get someone's attention now, but before you go to market, my philosophy is why don't you first define who you are, who you're targeting, what you want to say, and how you want to position yourself, amongst other things, right? I'm so kind of keeping it high level for now, and maybe we'll drop into a little bit more details around it. But so I just have a lot of experience. I've done this for Fortune 500 brands. I've done this for thousands of entrepreneurs and small businesses, and uh, so anyway, I just want to make that clarification. So the question,
Super important, by the way. And if, maybe I was going to ask you what's more important, marketing or branding. I bet you're going to say they're both important. They're just different cogs in the wheel.
it's about, well, for me, it's about a sequence. So they are both important. And so the way that I visualize it in two different ways. For people who are linear thinkers, I would say my sequence of things is you start with your business strategy. From that, you need a brand strategy to translate your business into terms that your customers care about. And then once you build a brand strategy, then you create a marketing strategy. So your brand strategy informs your marketing strategy and it fulfills your business strategy. So that's one way I think the linear people will appreciate that approach. But for someone who wants to look at branding more holistically, I see branding as like the hub of an organization, of a company. And that hub, kind of like a seed or a kernel, really informs marketing, but it also informs the culture of the company. It also informs how you go to market to attract potential employees or team members. It also informs the client experience and the customer experience and product development and all those sort of downstream things. And so when you look at branding in that kind of way, you look at it as an asset. You look at it as it's something you want to nurture, develop, and fine tune over time rather than a one and done. Here's my logo, now I have a brand. And if I think people have evolved over the years that to know that branding is more than just a logo. And if you haven't, then then that's something to kind of look at. It's like branding is so much more than a logo. A logo is just one small piece, perhaps
Yeah.
a visual identifier of a brand.
Well, I remember also, Reed, when I was building my sports complex in Cedar Park, you also came out early and we're coming up with names and brands. And I really realized I really appreciated what you're saying now. My project is called The Crossover. I'm still an owner in The Crossover. We built it here in Austin. But you asked me so many questions that I was not expecting because I think I thought brand was your logo essentially. It's your logo and your energy. And you asked me so many questions about what the intention was, what the customer experience was. What do you want the customer to walk away from? What's the feeling every time they touch or they're in your sports complex? And and to be honest, I think we did an okay job. I actually like the name quite a bit. I actually like the logo,
You did a great
but
job.
thank you. I think there's more. I learned there was more we probably could have done, but it's actually kind of it's some of it's just happened now that we're 5 years into the opening of the center. It's kind of some of it's kind of figuring itself out. I think for better or worse, I think the center's taken on some of its own branding. And it's actually in this case, I think we've been fortunate because I think we're looked at as like a really strong communal asset to the city of Cedar Park in Austin, and that's maybe that's luck, but it worked out pretty good.
It's all in divine timing. I think it all worked out as it should.
I guess so. I'm like, oh my God, Ree, you're asking me so many questions. I don't really know. So Ree, let me ask you a question for those who maybe have a business, who are thinking about this issue right now, how to brand it or, what have you. I, I understand what you're saying, but like, I'll give you a dumb example since I'm just a real estate guy.
Yeah.
Um, Amazon. I mean, not particularly an interesting logo. The name really makes no sense. It never made sense, even when they were a bookseller. It really didn't make sense. And yet they're one of the large. They don't have really a tagline. They have nothing. It's just this logo, and yet they're one of the most powerful, wealthiest corporations. Was that just because the product and service was so good, the branding didn't matter? In other words, is there secret genius to that branding that I'm missing because I don't understand it, or do some companies just make it without the branding?
Yeah. Well, okay. So we just established that branding is so much more than just a logo. But if we were to just double click on the logo itself, there is some intentionality with the logo, right? There's the arrow that connects the A to Z. And so originally Amazon was all about really delivering any product from A to Z, right? And so there's a story that's imbued in there that informed the visual expression of Amazon.
Got
But
it. So you're saying early on that that idea of delivering A to Z was already in their culture, and that's exactly what they do.
that's right. Yeah. So if you look at the logo, you'll even see that little that arrow underneath that connects you from A to Z, the A in the Amazon and the Z in the
Yeah.
Amazon. Now
Okay.
that's just from an execution perspective. That's what came out in the design expression to create that logo. So in parentheses, one of the most powerful ways that you can bring your brand into a logo is to help tell a story. So it's not just about coming up with anyone can give you a pretty logo or come up with an icon or a symbol, but does it tell the story? Does it reinforce the story that you're trying to tell? So if you really look at branding more than just another piece of it, like what's the story that you are trying to tell? And can your logo communicate that? Now, I've been in branding for 23, 24 years. Sometimes you don't have to put all the responsibility of the logo to communicate every single thing about your brand. So sometimes you'll see a lot of logos that have a very simple word mark. They're very intentional about the font, and we can get into like whether it's a sans serif font or a serif font or a script font. And sometimes, particularly a lot of luxury high-end brands, they've all moved towards just a very simple typographic logo. But what they've done in terms of a brand is create a whole visual language and a whole experience such that if you recognize the brand experience, then you recognize, if you recognize the visuals of it, then you recognize that brand. Because that's how we interact with brands. Typically, it's more than just, we don't just interact with the logo.
Right. Tell us more about that. I want to hear more about that. When you talk about the experience, can you like maybe give me an example of maybe a product you worked on or something that's very obvious where it really does interweave almost perfectly as an experience that's bigger than the logo?
Yeah, well, I think one way. So I work with I worked with a range of like coaches, consultants, and professional service providers, but also some e-commerce and product brands. So you pick and choose. Actually, let's interact with you. What kind of industry would you like for me to unpack? Because I have so many case studies to pull from.
I would love you to pick an online brand that went from nothing to something because I know we all know with our friends like Ryan Moran and what have you that it is such a crowded marketplace with so many products that I think it really takes someone pretty brilliant to stick out of the crowd and become like a leader in a certain kind of category, particularly online with so much noise. Do you have anything like that you could pull from?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's just so many. So there's some online.
Do you have one that you worked on that you can maybe give an example of just kind of how you guys had a win?
Yeah, there's a lot. So I worked with an LSAT test prep company called Odyssey Test Prep, and at the time they were a pretty small, LSAT test prep company in New York, and now they have multiple locations. Within a month after rebranding, they had a 400% increase in their revenue because everything was in their branding was dialed in. And what I want to share about that is think about it. LSAT is one of the most arguably boring industries. And what we decided to dial
For
in,
those of you who don't know, LSAT is studying for your for an exam that to become a lawyer. It's the LSAT. So that's what he's
yeah,
talking about.
yeah,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
So we brought in so much personality and colors and visuals. Like if you go to the website, Odyssey Test Prep, we brought in so much personality um, and colors and vibrancy. Now that's the visual expression, but underneath that was a story of helping people to have fun and excitement in the process, right? And so if you have fun and excitement in what you're learning, chances are most likely you're going to retain, more likely you're going to be more interested in it. And so I'm sort of giving a very high level overview of the strategic work that we've done, but we brought that fun all the way into every aspect of their brand. And we also created different like high level options from like if you want one-on-one. So like particularly for some online brands, they have like what's called an ascension model. So we wanted to create something that was a very high-end experience, but we wanted to create something that was also for a large group of people. And so I haven't checked it lately, but I'm pretty sure he has like 20 or 30 different locations around the world now.
That's
And
incredible.
all that from just and true story. If you ever the CEO is called Jonathan McCarthy, and true story. He found me online. He's like, "Hey, I just need a website," and I just he had some really small budget, and similarly, you had said I asked you a lot of questions earlier, and that's what I do. I was like, okay, well, what are you trying to do with the website, and who are you trying to attract? And okay, let's just say we were to just do your website. What are the assets? What is the message? What's the story? What's the experience? And the truth is, he didn't have the answer to all these questions. So then, how do you expect someone to create a website for you when you're not even giving them the tools to be able to create that? That's like saying, "Hey, build me a house. Just build me a house." Oh, okay. Well, how many rooms do you want? And what kind of furniture do you like? And what kind of like all that sort of blueprint thinking, that architecture thinking is where I start before we actually talk about furniture and paint and curtains and all that sort of stuff. It's like, let's build this house, let's build a foundation so that we can transform your website, so that we can transform your social media, and so that we can actually create the experience that we were talking about earlier.
You know, Ree, I was thinking as you're talking about this, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, we don't have those questions answered. Like we get excited almost, and the problem with an entrepreneur is we can get so sold or so excited by our idea that we haven't built the house, as you would say, we haven't built the whole house, we've built part of it. What would you suggest? Like, if there was, like, I know you took me through a grill of questions. If you were to say there's three or four, just to start, like, what were some of the key questions that you think often get missed by an entrepreneur when thinking about their company or maybe thinking about their brand or what they want to launch and how to
Yeah,
communicate it?
I love this question because every time I get interviewed on things like this, I always have to start there because it's so simple. And I'll give you sort of the 2.0 or maybe even the 5.0 version of this line of questioning. But typically, branding starts from an outside in approach. And the first three questions you should be asking are who, what, why. Who are your target audiences?
Mm.
What are the problems that you solve for them? And then why should they listen to you versus all the other people, products, resources, books, trainings, whatever? Why should they listen to you versus all these other people? How can you uniquely solve that problem for them? Now, if we double click on the why part, this comes up for a lot of people too. Well, I don't know. I don't know why. And so there within is like another set of questions. Okay, well, what's something that you can credibly own? What is something that is relevant to your target audiences? And what is something that is unique in the category? Is it a process that you have that's unique? Is it, are you doing it? Maybe you're not unique. Maybe you're just better, right? And so it's the intersection of what is unique, what is credible, and what is relevant is where you want to best differentiate your brand. But anyway, let me pause there because
Hmm.
I do feel called, particularly since you and I we've been on a spiritual journey, and I do feel this in my bones where the who, what, and why questions, this outside in approach, I think that's foundational, but there's the flip side to that who, what, and why. And there is why I work with leaders and CEOs and visionaries and founders. And it's like, who are you? Who are you?
Mm.
What is your message? What is your story? What is your position? And then why are you in this business? Why are you building this brand? You know, that's a nod to Simon Sinek, right? Start with why. And so there is a who, what, why that works concurrently with the external who, what, why. And I think for me, when those two things come together, that's when you're like, okay, now we're in a relationship with our target audiences. And that's, to me, that that's really a big part of branding, is like you are creating a relationship with the people that you were meant to create a relationship with.
Awesome. You know what? A long time ago, I worked for Sony Pictures, and I was vice president of family entertainment. And people would pitch me their ideas. I probably would take 2 or 3 thousand pitches a year. Like every day, I had 5 pitches. And I found that there's something interesting out there that people would pitch similar ideas at the same time. So if somebody wanted to do a dog film, I would get 5 dog films within 3 months, and they were very, very similar to each other. But I found that the ones that were actually best is when the dog film was related to a true story that that creator had had around dogs. Like, like when you synthetically try to create something like a product or a service, or in this case, a film, but
Yeah.
you have really no story or experience behind it. I find for some reason, I don't know if humans just if it's a natural human pickup, but like when you're saying having the who, what, and why of both the entrepreneur and the product, I know from my Sony days intuitively, and even when I built the crossover, the developer's story was so authentic to why we built that sports complex
Yeah.
that I don't usually say yes to sports complexes that are of this size, but his story was so compelling that I kind of bet on him. I feel like you're saying the same thing. Like it's like if the story's not really if the entrepreneur doesn't even know their story, or if the entrepreneur doesn't have like it's in their head, but it's not really like actualized in their spirit or like their passion for what they're doing, it perhaps it's just not as potent or powerful.
That's true. I would say that. And by the way, for those listening in who have had a lot of success without these concepts and these ideas that I'm referring to, it is possible to make a lot of money and to build a business without branding. But it's not what you're able to make, it's what you're not able to create because you don't have that branding dialed in. Branding becomes an amplifier, it becomes an accelerant because everything is dialed in. And so when you don't have the branding in place, guess what? You have to work harder on your marketing. If you're doing paid ads, you probably have to test more because you're throwing a bunch of stuff up against the wall because you don't know who you are. You're just trying to see what the market responds to. That's one way. That's one potential pitfall. Or you have to sell harder. And there's a lot of people who are great salespeople, sometimes in a very manipulative way, and no one likes to be sold to, but we all love to buy. I'm sure we heard this phrase, right? No one likes to be sold to, but we all love to buy. And so there's a threshold, there's a ceiling, a cap at how you can grow your business over time if you're just relying on marketing and sales. Why do you think Coca-Cola, like if they've never, which is all branding, if they didn't do a launch, and if they didn't do any advertising and marketing, they have a strong brand. People are still going to buy Coca-Cola because they're connected to that emotional feeling that they've hammered through over generations.
Makes sense. Hey, Reed, just as a gut check as a business owner, like whether it's my company, I feel like I've spent a reasonable amount of time with like my company, Thrive FP, investing on purpose, and what does that mean? But I imagine you can always go deeper down the rabbit hole. Like, how do I know as an entrepreneur or as an owner of a company, how do I know if I've done enough branding or not? I mean, look, you know me, I'm not a large size corporation. I'm just kind of a mid-sized real estate company. How do I know? How do I know if it's enough or not? Is there questions or the way it shows up in your sales, or is it customer interviews, or how do you get a sense of where you're at?
Yeah, this is good. So now we're getting to like level two questions, right? Because the first line of like questions are probably for people who are just starting to build their brand or they don't know where to start, right? When I'm working with typically I work with more established businesses like mid-sized companies like yours. They're in the conversation of a rebrand, right? And they're thinking about we need to change our brand. So typically, what comes up when someone's thinking about a rebrand, remember I talked earlier about the sequence of activities is your business, your brand, and then your marketing. Now, follow me here. So typically why most people who come to me who are looking for a rebrand, it's because they've changed their business. They changed their business strategy, their business model. Maybe they changed who they're targeting, or maybe they're expanding their business to appeal to different audiences that maybe the current brand isn't a strong alignment with. And so now we need to expand the brand to make them feel a part of the totality of your brand. So there's a change in the business or an evolution of the business and all the stuff the change in the vision. So that's one entry point that sometimes people come and say, hey, we need to rebrand. We need to change our brand strategy. Another entry point is when our marketing isn't working. Oh, we know our business, but our marketing's not working. It's not converting as well as it used to be. It's a saturated marketplace. Everyone's saying the same thing in marketing as we are suddenly because guess what? People copy and follow and get inspiration from it. Like we're all borrowing from each other in some degree, shape, or form. And so usually sometimes brands have come back to me after 2 or 3 or 3 to 5 years and saying, hey, we need to keep being ahead. We need to keep evolving. And so because our marketing's not working, so that's usually another point to say, okay, well, if our marketing's not working and we're committed to investing in marketing, maybe we need to go back and look at our positioning. Maybe we need to go back and look at our message. Maybe we need to go back and say, oh, well, we haven't touched our visuals. And again, branding is so much more than the visuals, but we look dated. You know, sometimes clients come to me and they look like they're 5 or 10 years old, or they look like everyone else in their industry. And so that's just an indicator. That's not the only thing. But if you're coming across as dated, you might be losing opportunities. So I forgot who it was, but actually I was looking for a sound healer, right? And I host these retreats now, but I was looking for a sound healer and I had 2 different websites. One that looked like it was from the 90s and one that looked like it had some really beautiful design and really in line with the esoteric world, you know. Which one do you think I went with? I went with the one that actually put some intention and thought into how they present themselves, you know? So it's kind of like I'm referencing Devil Wears Prada in a way. It's like, that's what you chose to show up to the whole world. Like this is your expression to the outside world. So anyway, so I hope that helps. So it's somewhere usually in the business side and somewhere in the marketing side.
It's very helpful. You know, I was also thinking, Rhea, as you were talking, a couple of things. One, I think with everybody wanting to be a presence on social media, I'm really, even with my own podcast and growing my own podcast,
Yeah.
I realize messaging, branding, like all these things, I mean, it is such a crowded world that you really, if you don't connect on message nowadays, if you don't connect like pinpoint target, there's so much noise out there, both in the marketplace and online. And online, I mean, like I'm watching the people of my friends who are friends, I should say, who are successful. I still think I'm a student with a lot to learn, quite frankly. Like I'm watching Ryan Moran went to the supermarket and talked about $100 million brands going through the shopping aisles last week, and he got like 160,000 views in like 48 hours. And I saw the genius. First of all, you know, I love Ryan, but like I could see the genius of how he broke the algorithm because he made something that could have been really dry. Like how do you create $100 million brand, which is what Ryan's about. But he turned it into a supermarket extravaganza with
Yeah.
that creativity.
Yeah.
Your brand should be gay, even if you're not. That is a title like no other title. So I'm just getting a sense, Ree, that maybe even is that not execution of branding? Like, what was the thought behind your book and your title? And is that not exactly what we're talking about? How do you stand out? Could you use that as an example?
Yeah. So I wanted to write a book. Well, actually, a lot of people said, Ree, you should write a book. And at some point, you hear the calling, and you're like, all right, fine, I got to write a book, right? Because usually a lot of my to work with me, it's usually at a high level, and so I wanted to be able to serve more people with a book, right? And the book is about brand authenticity. Now, if I said how to create an authentic brand, maybe you'll remember it, maybe you'll pick it up, but it wouldn't
The
have the
Authentic Brand by Is Re Perez.
yeah. I don't think I'd get the same reaction. Now, so the backstory, the story within the story is obviously I wanted to do something different. And I'm also teaching on a meta level the power of branding. So, what do I mean by that? Well, one of the concepts is that a brand should be bold, right? And if you look at my book, it has bold text.
Yes.
So
Put your book up again a little to the left. I want you're out of frame, and I really want to see your book. A little more this way. A little more this way. Perfect. Okay. No, go back to the left. A little this way. Perfect. Let's look at your book for a second. You picked a bright blue color, black type, and the word gay and white. And then even if you're not, the art and science of, and then you do actually say what the book's about. Your tagline is the art and science of creating an authentic brand. Okay, cool. I gotcha.
yeah. So, and also, it's funny that you pointed all that out because I'm looking at hierarchy, right? So I'm pulling you in with bold text, and then you're like, wait, subtitle, what's this about? And so I do qualify it, right? The second thing, so being bold, the second thing is to pique your curiosity. Now, usually what I get is some people say, oh, why should it be gay? That's what I want. I want to be able to
Right.
have a conversation starter and then be able to talk about, to have this very same conversation. The third thing that I'm teaching is the power of words and language. So I said your brand should be gay. I highlighted the word gay because that's going to grab someone's attention. But it's interesting when I ask people what they think about it. Oh, because gay people are so creative and they're so this and then that. And I was like, well, the power of words, I could have meant your brand should be happy, right? So words they signal a particular, they create a whole world that's associated with that. So the power of words, and then I'm kind of a little tongue in cheek, right? Even if you're not. So it gets you to stop in your tracks and think. The other thing that I'm also teaching, and also, by the way, it's pink. How many pink books have you seen on Amazon, right?
No, it's brilliant. Let me ask you a question just to cut to the chase. I want people to read your book. But what was it for you when you say your brand? Because obviously, I'm assuming that your brand should be gay. What you're saying is gay, as in what was it? Was it mean? Did it mean to be creative, outlandish, memorable? Like what words came to you for your experience, or all of it?
It's all of it, right? So remember earlier I talked about brand, and I talk about it in chapter one. It's like brand is a desired perception, and that you technically don't own your brand; it resides in people's minds. So I just say something, and then it's the audiences who see and hear that book and read that book. They're like, "What does it mean for them?" So they create the perception. So again, it's a little bit of on a meta level there, but the other thing too that's more personal is I know you talk a lot about purpose, right? But I came out in the 90s, and at that time in New York, it wasn't really safe to come out and be gay in the workplace. And so there's been a lot of, in that time period, I had to hide who I am. And so my whole journey, because the book is about the art and science of creating an authentic brand, so for me, it's also really personal by demonstrating that the real power is in knowing exactly who you are and who you're not, and not giving a crap about what other people think about you.
Wow,
That's true power. Is
that's
is
true power.
yeah.
Wow. I'm
So,
just taking that in, Ree. I think that makes total sense. That's pretty awesome. I think sometimes, and this is a lot of what my podcast is about, is I think sometimes we overthink things because we get so overwhelmed. I'm actually trying to listen to not too many podcasts or not too many how-tos
yeah,
because I think it actually takes away from my creativity at a certain point. Like I love to know things, but like even today, here's a simple stupid thing. I was working out this morning and I had to choose between a podcast or just some music.
yeah,
And I love Trevor Hall these days. I'm a Trevor Hall junkie, but I chose music because I feel like right now my soul and my body, like I know, like Yuri, like I just know so much that, and not that I'm a genius, but I kind of know a lot of things at this point. And so I almost like it's almost would confuse my instinct. And I think that's kind of what you're saying. Like in some ways, like know who you are, like
yeah,
really like ask the questions so you really know what you stand for, who you are. And a lot of people don't even know who they are. So it's like it's hard for them to be bold, back to your questions earlier, if you don't even know really who you are. And if you don't know who you are, then why'd you make your brand? And to connect who you are and why this brand exists. If there's no story, then maybe you'll synthetically just have success anyways. Maybe you won't.
yeah.
But if there is a story, I don't know if you know my friend Jesse Baruch, but Jesse has a new product called Whims. It is the best keto peanut butter chocolate cup you'll ever eat. Do you know him?
Yeah, I met him. Well, I met him through you, and we went for coffee once. And
Okay.
I thought it was just really brilliant how he's bringing healthy. See, I remember this, right? He's bringing like those nostalgic snacks that we all used to love, but the healthier version, right? And so that,
He is. I actually had John Mackey with my last podcast. It was a live one, Ree, and so Jesse brought all the whims for everyone. We were just going through boxes of whims. But the
yeah,
point was, if you think about what they're doing, Jesse, as you probably know, I'll have to need to have him on as like a bodybuilder, and his wife Leanne is this really highly memorable, amazing person who also has a story around autoimmune. Uh, and where she has permanent alopecia as part of her autoimmune. And she
okay,
talks about her journey and why eating less sugar was really like critical for her life because she was so sick. And
yeah,
so when I watch him as the bodybuilder and you have a keto chocolate product and then Leanne, and then together, both of them bring so much to it. But I watch the way they advertise online and they share their stories of healthy living and why it's so important to them. It feels to me very authentic to the brand.
sure,
And
yeah,
their brand is growing like this. Like I think if you guys haven't had a Whims, next time you go, it's they have Snickers now. They
yeah,
have deep chocolate, white chocolate, they got everything. And it's all like less than 1 gram of sugar. But not only is it the best tasting product, but the story matches it. So if I was to bet on them, like I know you never know, but like it's already doing this. But my guess is like it has a chance to really be a breakout hit. And that actually just comes more from my Sony days of instinct than having the branding brain. But I can see some similarities of
sure,
what I was doing versus kind of like how you think about brands.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I have a question for you.
yeah,
So once your book came out, which is very exposed, it's very personal. I mean, I really appreciate you sharing your personal story of what this meant to you in the 90s and coming out and not being safe. So obviously, when you come out with a pink book with that title, you've now told the world why this is important to you. You know, like who you're about.
yeah.
What were your pleasant surprises, wins? Maybe were some of the things like, gosh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or was it like, hell yeah, I'm so glad I did that? Like what? Because that's a bold statement to the world to go publicize that. What did you, what was your experience of that?
Thanks for asking that question. No one's asked me that question in that kind of way, and I'll tell you a few things. There's some of the surprises and some of the things that I've learned. One, uh, I would say that probably 90% of the people who buy my book are straight men, straight women. So that's so cool, and what an amazing uh, acknowledgement, right? Because they see the cleverness in it and they appreciate the cleverness of it. Two, um, I've always felt even I've always felt, and I'm sure some people listening in can relate to this, at some version we felt like, oh, we didn't really fit in. And maybe it's entrepreneurs, or maybe it's just a phenomenon for all of us. But I always felt like I didn't really fit in any particular one group. And it would you would think that one of the communities that I would fit in really well with would be the gay community. And I didn't necessarily feel that always. And I was just surprised that I would get comments from the gay community that, oh, this book is not really promoting the gay agenda, or it's this and that. I never said it was, right? And so that was a surprise. I was like, and so rather than celebrating me putting something out there in a very interesting way, that I would get comments that says that I'm not really representing the gay community in that well. That I don't know. That was probably like maybe a few comments, but that was a surprise. And
That's
I was like,
a surprise for sure. Yeah.
yeah. And then I think the third thing is, I think most of the thing that I really love is that, people actually, they read it and they say, wow, there's a lot of my personal story in it. And they probably wanted more tactics. The reality is, like, all the strategy and some of the tactics are in there, but I think what they're missing is that rather than getting a book on saying, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this sequence, what they are missing is that I'm actually teaching them how to think like a brander, how to think like their best, like their in-house brand champion and advocate, such that you have the tools and you can navigate when the business evolves, when the market changes.
Right.
Yeah, so those are the interesting things. And then aside from that, it's led to opportunities for speaking opportunities. It led to clients that said, yes, I know who you are. And so there's those beautiful benefits of that. But largely, it was a fun project. The last thing I will say is, you know what they say when the research is finally published, it becomes outdated. I feel like I've evolved in my career and also me as a person, that in some small ways, now don't get me wrong, there's so much value that's still relevant in there, but I've evolved the technology that I use to build brands. I've evolved my point of view around building brands. For example, I have a whole section there where I talk about personal brand versus company brand, and I wasn't really a big fan of personal brands. I've changed my tune on that. Actually, personal brands is on the rise, and that's equally, if not more important than the company brands. And so I changed my views on that. So that's been outdated. And then what's the other surprise I wanted to share with you around that?
That's a big one. That's interesting because I actually have a personal website, and I'm not convinced whether it's valuable yet or not. Maybe it'll be valuable as things grow. But my marketer insisted that I have a personal website that connects to the podcast, to my company Thrive, like that. All parts of my life kind of connect in one central hub.
Yeah, and it's true. So the reality is we need both, because one can feed the other. But let me just double click on the person. Why personal brand is because, at least for a lot of visionaries and entrepreneurs, they might stand for something. Let's use the common example that's used is Richard Branson, right? So if Richard Branson stands for innovation and being a pioneer and a trailblazer, that's agnostic to industries. So he can go into different categories and infuse what he stands for and what his brand is about. And so that is one of the benefit of the personal brand, and then they can have different business brands as well. And so what I'm finding, particularly with a lot of entrepreneurs or founders who like to create many different businesses and creating like an ecosystem of businesses, is that if you build a personal brand, and I'm talking more than just like the whole influencer, kind of personal brands, but if you build a personal brand, if you're a CEO, an executive, or a front-facing executive of a company, we want to connect with people. We want to follow and support people. And so if you build that know, like, and trust factor, then you can lend that trust to whatever business or product you're promoting. So it's both. You need both. And that's evolved. I could probably write a whole book on personal branding, but that's where I was at when I wrote the book. Thanks for
I
letting me
love
share
it.
that. No one's really asked me
No,
that.
it's interesting. I want to ask you because I know it's part of your evolution. Not, I mean, things are changing fast, anyways. I really think that I'm going to save this question for you, but I do want to jump into a little bit of GPT with you, but not quite yet. But this idea of evolution that you're talking about, you've actually you've actually reinvented yourself too. You've created this spiritual capital mastermind, which I want to talk to you a bit about. Like, it seems like you're spending a little less time focusing on what worked 10 years ago. And it feels like this new spiritual capital mastermind is part of the evolution, not only of yourself, but maybe of your company and your branding. Do I have that right? Is this all an evolution of your company, of you personally, or is this something else? And can you explain it to us a little bit?
Yeah, it's both. Um, so right now I do high level consulting. I work with a very limited number of brands, and rather than going wider, which is what when I ran an agency, that's kind of what I was doing. I was working with so many brands every year, and I had a big team, and now what feels exciting for me is to work with a very limited number of brands and go deeper, bring all the things that I just shared at the top of the conversation all the way downstream into the culture, into the client experience and all the little touch points of that brand. And so rather than them coming to me for just the strategy, or my team with the look and feel and the website, like, yeah, there's all of that. But how can we infuse this starting with the CEO and founder such that energy gets imbued throughout the entire organization, all the way downstream, so that it makes an impact, using that word again. But the word that I like to use is that it creates resonance, that it creates resonance in the marketplace. So anyway, so there's that. And then concurrently, I'm on a spiritual path, and I've been on a spiritual path, but I had this idea of, well, why can't we integrate spirituality in our business? So I thought, well, why don't, someone had gave me the concept, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty cool concept. And then I decided to make a mastermind out of it. So I created the Spiritual Capitalism Mastermind. And this is sort of my newest creation and curation. And, when it came to me, within 4 weeks, I put like 14 founding members in the group. Now, that was the genesis of it, but the thought process here felt more like an assignment. And the assignment was to really help activate and elevate consciousness, to bring more love, joy, and freedom in the world through the personal brands, through the business brands that come together as leaders so that we can nourish their cup so that they can have the ripple effect in their brands and their businesses. And so that showed up of like, all right, well, we need to obviously focus on wealth creation, health optimization, and spiritual growth. Not necessarily in that order, but I was like, well, that's the track that I'm on. So I have to live it. I have to be it. And then I want to gather people to also be on that path. And by the way, JP too, I really wanted to do it in a way that was just so fun. Like, I've learned in the past couple of years, and I think you share this as well, but the more fun and play and joy that we bring into our lives, at least for me, I found that it has a direct correlation, if not necessarily the growth of my business, but the growth of who I am in relation to, in relation to where my business is at. And then I can navigate all the ups and downs and the shifts in a business, because at the end of the day, I know who I am and I'm having fun doing it.
That makes a lot of sense. I would say I feel the same way. And sometimes, by the way, it's just not fun. I know we started the conversation. I was just telling you, real estate right now hasn't been the
Yeah.
funnest cycle. But even in the middle of that, when you have the skills to know what it feels like when it's fun, it's like you kind of you kind of have a roadmap how to get back there. And to be honest, right now it's a little bit in flux. It kind of bounces back and forth. But to have the navigation to know who you are, what you're about, really what you're here to serve, your purpose is so important. You said
Yeah.
something. I want to ask you a question. You said to you earlier that you made a distinction. You said, I really want to have brands that have purpose, and I want to help people get brands with purpose. But then you said resonance.
Resonance,
And
yeah.
that's a very different thing. So let's talk about that. Like what is the why for you at this point? Like what is that? What does resonance or purpose mean to you? How do you know when you've had a win?
Yeah, so for so many years, and even in my book, and probably in still some degrees, I, my point of view was branding is about creating a desired perception. And when I thought with the surge of AI and ChatGPT and all the deep fake, whatever, all the stuff, I said, well, okay, it's actually possible for anything now to create the right perception, the right look and feel, the right image, the right message, all that sort of stuff. And so it's not just about the perception. It's about, is that resonating with the people that you're, like on a cellular level, is a brand creating resonance with the audiences that it's meant to create resonance with. And so what I meant by that is usually I look at brands aligning with people at the level of their ethos, at the level of their values, at the level of their operating principles, but also just resonating with them in terms of how they make them feel. And I'm sure we've heard that phrase, right, from Jim Rohn of like, no one really cares about what you do for them. They care about how you make them feel. And so, and I learned this from this. I got reminded of this too recently when I was at another event and I saw a good friend of mine, Michael Burnoff, who talks about stop focusing on what you're saying, focusing on reverse engineer the chemical response that you want people to have when you say what you say. And usually that chemical response is either some version of fear or anger or whatever, some sort of lower vibration. And by the way, a lot of marketers tap into, and sometimes they prey on that fear. Or you can create a chemical response of endorphins. And how can you use branding and marketing to empower people? And so for me, if your brand is about creating like a higher vibration resonance in the marketplace that transcends even just the products and service that you have, but it actually impacts the people so that they can go out and have better lives, then for me, why don't you create a brand that empowers people? Why don't you create a brand that uplifts people? And by the way, are there going to be brands that prey on fear and get you to do? Sure, there will be that. And so that's a different kind of resonance. And so I think it's implied when I'm referring to resonance, I'm kind of referring to creating a positive vibrational frequency that that lives beyond your lifetime.
Yeah. As I'm sure you're having, every person wants to talk about AI and artificial intelligence. And I think this brings up a good point, which is this, Ree, is that I think that as these GPTs get smarter and better at doing everything, human intelligence, human resonance is going to have a premium over, I didn't say artificial intelligence, but I don't call it artificial intelligence. I call it actually just intelligence now. But I actually define it as three intelligences. There's intelligence, you can call it the quantum collective intelligence. There's human intelligence, and there's divine intelligence. That spark of God, the soul, whatever
Yeah,
you call that.
yeah.
But the GPTs have gotten so good. I bet you it'd be very easy to say that we can all be replaced right now. Like I could probably get a brand 90% there if Joe Stolte would just help me with the right inputs. But I wonder as we get inundated with perfection, the perfect phone call, the perfect sales rep, the perfect this, the perfect that, the perfect brand, the perfect advertisement. I wonder if human beings will get so saturated with the synthetic that they'll either get better at understanding actual resonance, like that came from a human in a human story, or not. Um, because I think we're going to oversaturate this so quickly, where you will get better, like the next generation will be more perceptive. And my argument is that with AI, human artisanship, human creation will actually have a premium over just intelligence creation. And for those palates who get it, and when you talk about resonance and vibration, that might sound airy fairy to some people, But if you actually think about it, it's really not. It's kind of the, call it intuition, call it, why three people can tell me a story at Sony and one really hits me different than the other two. It hits me in the heartstrings. What does that mean? And I
Yeah.
know AI can simulate that and synthetically produce it. But I would argue, Reed, I don't know, I'd love to get your opinion, but I would argue that we're going to get so bored and saturated with synthetics that we're going to yearn for true resonance. Do you agree with that or do you see it differently?
Yeah, well, I preface by saying, in no way, shape, or form, and am I an AI expert. I'm kind of in the same boat as everyone else. I mean, AI is sort of evolving and faster than the pace that we can keep up with it. And I'm not even really trying to keep up with it, but I am trying to keep my pulse on the things that can make a difference in my life. And also, I'm shutting off things that don't, using my word, that don't resonate with me. Like I'll see something and I'm like, I can totally tell that that's AI generated. Doesn't resonate with me. I'm not going to support it. I mean, unless it was super creative, I might be like, that was actually pretty good. But still, it doesn't like hit here. It's more of like, all right, that was pretty cool. I respect that. Okay, so I preface by saying I'm not an AI expert. And so, um, oh my gosh, go back to your question. What was it? I got lost.
The
Ask
question was simply, do you really think that, do you think that human intelligence and human design will have a premium in branding and marketing going forward? Or do you think it gets blurry and blurry? Do you think people have enough? The AI is so smart and so good at simulating humans. Will we know the difference? Like, will we start to get good at sensing the difference? Or do you think it's going to be hard to blend? And either you know or you know, or if
I
you
think it's
don't know, you
both.
don't know kind of thing.
I mean, I think it might get hard to blend for sure. But the way that, because I do have friends in the AI space, so it's like sometimes they give me some tips that comfort me in terms of how to look at it. But one of the frames, actually a mutual friend of ours, Jerry, gave me this really fascinating way to look at it, which is that the robots are going to, I hope I get this correctly, but the robots are going to really replace a lot of the prefrontal cortex activities of our brain. Is going to replace or take over a lot of these things. And evolutionarily, that is going to allow us to not have to use our brain for those kinds of things. And since we really use a smaller fraction of our brain, that gives us, we have an opportunity to ourselves to have access to other parts of our brain. And we can probably even go back to remembering how we can communicate with other people through the one mind, through the frequency and the vibration of the mental, call it mentalism, whatever, the one mind. And that's when back in the day with the indigenous tribes or Indians, like that's how they would use smoke signals to kind of communicate with one another. They would tune in. So to the point there, if we really embark upon that opportunity, as my friend Jerry would say, is like, then robots are going to be like, fuck, look what humans can do. And
Right.
so we're going to coexist with the robots and AI, and we're going to have them there for what we need to do, the things that we don't really need to be doing. So it gives us access to do other things. Don't miss the opportunity to explore tuning into the other things that we can do. And so I feel, it's my belief that, or at least how I'm seeing it, is that there are going to be people who are going to get super smart and become super intelligent beings with AI, and there's going to be people that are just going to go down the other side and become even dumber because they're relying too much on AI and the robots to tell them what to do and how to think.
Yeah, I agree. We've hit an hour, and since I'm not Joe Rogan, I always try to stop my shows. We're actually about an hour nine. So I just have a question. Really, my last really thing is, besides, I want to thank you. How do people find you if they want to know more about Re and what you're doing or your spiritual mastermind? How do they find you?
Yeah, so everything is just on reperez.com, and that's RE, one E, because most people want to do like REE, but it's REPEREZ.com. It's a very simple personal brand site. Sometimes less is more, but part of my reinvention and rebranding, kind of getting out of here and having conversations with people like you, is like I'm embarking upon this next chapter, this next season of my life. So yeah, find me there or Instagram.
So, Ree, I want to thank you. It's kind of fun. I think one of my favorite things about the podcast is not only sharing with the audience, but like having, like, you and I have never had this conversation. I feel like it's like, I feel like I'm learning new parts of you, and it all makes sense to me because I know you as you speak about like the artistry of what you do, that like really standing out, the passion. I drive a bright blue car and like, my watches, like I love standing out. And I think you and I share that kind of like animated, fun, creative, but to hear you really bring it and take both the tactics and the artist and bring it together has been a really enjoyable conversation for me. And I better understand you from this time together. So I thank you for that.
No, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. And I look forward to getting together in Austin soon, JP.
Me too. And I'm afraid to ask you, but one day I was going to ask you, could you evaluate my brand for me? But we'll have to talk about that.
I'll go easy on you, JP.
Please. We'll get there. Thank you, Ree, so much.
Thanks, JP. Cheers.
Sending love. Bye, Ree.
Bye.